Meanwhile, another individual who ran this same famed independent office, the Southern District of New York, Preet Bharara, he says, based on the available public evidence, Giuliani is in deep trouble. Now, I mentioned that office, and we have a special expert with experience there tonight. Danya Perry is a former SDNY prosecutor, and Nick Ackerman is a former Watergate special prosecutor, and back in the day, served in the SDNY as well, and overlapped and worked with Giuliani. Good to see you both.
Thank you.
You are right.
Nick, do you believe that this raid means there is bad news for Rudy Giuliani and he's at risk of indictment?
Yeah, I think it does mean it's bad news. It's very difficult to get a judge to approve a search warrant on a lawyer. Never mind a well-known lawyer like Rudy Giuliani, who was the former mayor of the city of New York, was the lawyer to President Trump. The government has to go in and provide very specific facts justifying that a crime was committed. And under these circumstances, where it is such a high-level person, you would expect that the Department of Justice wouldn't go in there but with the most refined and detailed facts of criminal activity. And once you do that, you have to ask, well, what kind of evidence is it? It's probably pretty decent evidence considering that they're going in for the search warrant on this individual. And then you've got to ask, well, how close are they to actually being able to indict and convict beyond a reasonable doubt?
Danya, what did you think of what we heard here from Mr. Giuliani, who famously knows his way around this office and referred to that in the interview, his attempt both to minimize the scope of the search and then also tell that story about what he says he offered them?
Sure. Well, it's a little hard to decipher because it's fundamentally gibberish. I mean, I think my first year criminal procedure law students have a better understanding of the fundamentals of criminal law than the former U.S. attorney. This was not an illegal or unconstitutional search, as he also said in his Fox interview last night. The fact that the feds had access to this sort of iCloud, pointing skyward, is not unusual and is exactly the procedure they should have followed. And this was, by the books. And so, it's not a defense. And he was, as you point out, the U.S. attorney who was charged with overseeing, no doubt hundreds of search warrants under his watch. So he knows or should know how it works. And his offer to provide this Hunter Biden, I'm sorry, he also confused, I think, Tucker Carlson and Hunter Biden in his interview. But his offer to provide that hard drive, first of all, as you say, it's just his own account. But it would not surprise me at all if the agents refused that offer. They did not have a warrant for anything other than the very specific electronic devices that they seized. So I think that also would have been right by the book.
Yeah, you make an important distinction there, which for viewers matters, which is Giuliani's making it sound like, oh, they wanted devices. I got all kinds of devices. Come on in, take it. When in fact, legally, they can only take the devices that are tied to the investigation. In this case, apparently tied to Mr. Giuliani. So if he's got a friend's device or a Hunter Biden device, or someone was over for a cocktail and they left a phone on the table, the warrant doesn't necessarily give the government that level of powers. It almost sounded like he wanted to sandbag them. Again, that's just my interpretation based on what was a little bit of a bizarre response. Nick, we wanted to get you in tonight because viewers may remember how you walked us through many aspects of the Mueller probe. Can we talk about collusion for a second?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've learned today.
You ready? Well, first,
sure.
Nick, first, I just want to make sure you're ready, but I figured you were.
I'm ready.
Because we've talked about it before. Well, we talked about it before, Nick, and it does look worse now. And I'm one of those people where I go on the news and I talked about how there wasn't enough evidence yet or the high bar of a criminal conspiracy. And sometimes people come up to me in the street and say, Ari, why are you being so technical with it? It looks like collusion. Well, boy, does some of this look like collusion. I want to read from this warning that we mentioned. Washington Post says, FBI goes to Giuliani, and they say, you're the target of a Russian disinformation campaign, part of an extensive effort by the Bureau to warn members of Congress. They also warned a conservative media outlet here. I'm reading from the Post, One America News. They faced a risk of being used to further Russia's attempt to influence the election's outcome. My question to you, Nick, is At what point is it not, oh, some scary disinformation campaign? And at what point does it become direct collusion? If Mr. Giuliani, as an agent and lawyer of the president, knowingly and vociferously collaborates on what he's been warned is a Russian op to try to discredit the man who actually would become president, Joe Biden.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think what you have there is evidence, you have knowledge of an agreement basically to side with the Russians, to take on what the Russians are feeding them in order to undermine their chief political rival. I mean, they did it knowingly, which we didn't really know before as much as we do now. The fact that they were specifically told by the FBI that they were being fed a crock of bull by all of these Ukrainians, everybody they've talked to, and it's all being orchestrated by the Russian government. They knew that. I mean, the idea that they somehow just didn't believe our own intelligence sources is absurd. I mean, this is the same attitude, the same way they've treated U.S. intelligence throughout this entire episode, starting in the 2016 campaign. So to me, this shows actual knowledge. They are told that they are just being puppets for the Russian government, and they don't care. They take it on completely and go along with the program because they're more concerned about working with the Russians to get rid of Joe Biden so that he is not a threat in the presidential election.
It's wild. It's wild, and a lot of this has come out afterward, after the Mueller report, after the Trump folks left office. Danya, I want to read to you what Preet Bharara said. Many will remember him as a U.S. attorney in the Southern District that Trump initially kept on, tried to cultivate, then dramatically ousted along with the other U.S. attorneys. He agrees with something you said on this program when the news broke. SDNY is probably far along, given what showing they have to make a probable cause to do the search in the first place. There's a good likelihood of a charge. Based on what we know, Danya, would that charge be something just about foreign lobbying and filing, which, while serious, would be seen by many as quite narrow? Or do you see other potential felonies afoot?
Well, based on the discussion that you and Nick just had, there certainly could be much more serious charges. And again, not to minimize how serious a FARA charge would be. Each charge carries with it a penalty of up to 5 years in prison. And this conduct, as we understand it, certainly goes to the core of what FARA is meant to protect against. This is, a lack of transparency is one thing, but this is another level. So if he's acting as a foreign agent, without registering, that's a FARA violation. But if he is actually, that there could be other national security implications that go far beyond and that carry much stiffer criminal penalties. So I do think some of this news is very troubling here, and also it's got to be troubling for Mr. Giuliani that it's coming out.
It's a lot of heat. It goes to what Donald Trump was doing long before he knew that Biden would even be the nominee. It was thwarted. It failed. But boy, are the feds interested in looking at who did it, whether it was felonious, and whether that rises also the level potentially of the person for whom it was supposed to benefit, former President Trump. So there's a lot here, big story here Friday night. Danya Perry and Nick Ackerman, thanks to both of you. We go to just our short